Lisa stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, dark circles under her eyes telling the story of another sleepless night. Her shift at Children's General Hospital had ended just 30 minutes ago, but she was still wearing her faded blue scrubs because, honestly, what else did she have to change into? The clock on her phone showed 11:47 p.m. Another 12-hour shift was behind her, and she had exactly 8 hours before she needed to be back. 8 hours to sleep, eat, and somehow find the energy to do it all over again. But sleep wasn't coming easy these days. Not when the bills kept piling up like autumn leaves, and her bank account balance kept getting smaller and smaller. She walked into her tiny studio apartment, the one she'd been calling home for the past 2 years. The rent was cheap, but even cheap felt expensive when you're barely making ends meet. The apartment came furnished, which was a blessing because she couldn't afford to buy her own furniture. The couch had seen better days, probably sometime in the 1990s, and the kitchen table wobbled no matter how many folded napkins she stuck under the short leg. Lisa kicked off her white sneakers, the ones she'd bought 6 months ago and had been wearing every single day since. They were supposed to be replaced every 3 months according to the hospital guidelines, but 3 months had come and gone, and she was still wearing the same pair. The sole on the left shoe had a small hole that she'd tried to fix with duct tape, but the tape was starting to peel off. She opened her refrigerator and sighed. A half-empty carton of milk, some leftover Chinese takeout from 3 days ago that she probably shouldn't eat, and a bag of baby carrots that were starting to look a little sad. She grabbed the carrots and closed the fridge. Dinner was served. As she munched on the carrots, she thought about her day at the hospital. Working in the pediatric ward was both the best and worst job in the world. The best because she got to help kids get better, to see their smiles when they felt well enough to laugh again. The worst because seeing children in pain never got easier, no matter how many years she'd been doing this job. She'd become a nurse because she wanted to help people. Growing up, her family didn't have much money, and she remembered how kind the nurses were when her little brother had to stay in the hospital for a week with pneumonia. Those nurses made her feel safe and taken care of, even when her parents were stressed and worried. She wanted to be that person for other families, but nursing school had been expensive, really expensive. Even with scholarships and working part-time jobs, she'd had to take out student loans. Big ones, the kind that follow you around like a shadow for years and years. Every month, $467 went straight from her paycheck to the loan company. $467 that she could have used for a newer car, or better shoes, or maybe even a vacation someday. And then there was her mom. Sweet, wonderful mom who had raised Lisa and her brother all by herself after their dad left when Lisa was 12. Mom who worked 2 jobs to make sure Lisa could go to college. Mom who was now fighting diabetes and high blood pressure, and whose medications cost more money than anyone should have to spend on pills. Lisa sent her mom $300 every month. It wasn't much, but it helped with the prescription costs and the doctor visits. She never told her mom how tight money was for her because she knew her mom would stop accepting the help. And then what would happen? Her mom's health was more important than Lisa's comfort. After the loan payment and the money for her mom, Lisa had about $800 left for everything else. Rent was $550. Car insurance was $95. Her phone bill was $45. Gas for her 10-year-old Honda was usually around $60, depending on how much driving she did. That left her with about $50 for food, clothes, and anything else life might throw at her. $50 for food meant a lot of rice and beans, a lot of peanut butter sandwiches, and a lot of generic brand everything. She'd gotten pretty good at making cheap meals taste decent, but sometimes she missed being able to just buy something without having to check the price tag first. She finished the carrots and walked over to her closet. Calling it a closet was generous. It was more like a small corner of the room with a metal bar stretched across it. Hanging on that bar were her 5 work uniforms. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, 1 sweater with a small hole in the elbow, and a black dress that she'd worn to her cousin's wedding 2 years ago. The black dress was too dressy for everyday wear, but not dressy enough for anything truly special. It was the kind of dress you wore when you needed to look nice but didn't have anywhere important to go. She touched the fabric and remembered how proud she'd felt wearing it to the wedding, how it had made her feel pretty and put together. Tomorrow, her friend Jessica would probably mention the hospital gala again. Jessica had been talking about it for weeks, showing Lisa pictures of dresses she was considering, asking Lisa what she thought about different hairstyles. The gala was in 3 weeks and it was a big deal. All the important people from the hospital would be there. Doctors, administrators, board members, and donors who gave money to keep the children's ward running. Jessica kept saying Lisa should come. "You work so hard," Jessica would say. "You deserve to have some fun. Plus, it's good for your career to be seen at these things." Lisa knew Jessica was right. Networking mattered in any job, even nursing. The nurses who got promoted, who got chosen for special programs, who got recommended for better positions at other hospitals, they were usually the ones who made connections outside of just doing their daily work. But how could she explain to Jessica that she didn't have anything to wear? That even if she could afford a dress, she'd need shoes to match and maybe a small purse, and probably something to do with her hair that didn't involve the simple ponytail she wore every day at work. Jessica made twice as much money as Lisa because she worked in the intensive care unit, where the pay was higher. Jessica's parents had paid for her nursing school, so she didn't have student loans following her around. Jessica's mom was healthy and didn't need help paying for medications. Jessica lived in a nice apartment with her boyfriend, so they split all the bills. Lisa wasn't jealous of Jessica, not really. She was happy for her friend. But sometimes it was hard to listen to Jessica talk about buying new clothes or going out to nice restaurants like it was no big deal. She looked at her reflection in the small mirror next to her closet. She was 28 years old, and she felt like she was stuck in place while everyone else was moving forward. Other people her age were buying houses, getting married, taking trips to Europe. She was eating carrots for dinner and wondering if her shoes would last another month. But tomorrow she'd put on her clean scrubs, drive to the hospital, and take care of sick children. Because no matter how hard her own life was, those kids needed her, and maybe that had to be enough for now. Monday morning came too quickly, as Monday mornings always did. Lisa dragged herself out of bed at 5:30 a.m., showered quickly in her tiny bathroom, and put on a fresh pair of scrubs. These ones were slightly newer than yesterday's, which meant they were only 2 years old instead of 3. She grabbed a granola bar from her kitchen counter and headed out to her car. The Honda started on the third try, which was pretty good for a car that had seen better days. She'd been putting off getting it serviced because she didn't have the money, but she couldn't avoid it much longer. The engine was making a weird rattling sound that probably meant something expensive was about to break. The drive to Children's General took 22 minutes in morning traffic. She'd timed it dozens of times because being late wasn't an option when you were barely keeping your job as it was. She parked in the employee lot, grabbed her purse, and walked through the automatic doors that always smelled like disinfectant and hope. "Morning, Lisa," called out Janet from the reception desk. Janet had been working at the hospital for 15 years and knew everyone's name, everyone's story, and everyone's coffee order. "You're in room 314 today. New patient." Lisa nodded and headed to the elevator. Room 314 was in the pediatric oncology wing, which meant she'd be working with a child who had cancer. These cases were always the hardest and the most rewarding at the same time. Hard because watching kids fight diseases that no child should ever have to face broke your heart every single day. Rewarding because when they got better, when they smiled again, when they went home healthy, it made every difficult moment worth it. She knocked gently on the door of room 314 and pushed it open. Inside, she found a small girl who looked to be about 8 years old, lying in the hospital bed with an IV line in her tiny arm. Her head was covered with a colorful bandana instead of hair, and she was coloring in a book with crayons that were scattered across the rolling table next to her bed. "Hi there," Lisa said softly. "I'm Lisa, and I'm going to be your nurse today." The little girl looked up with the biggest brown eyes Lisa had ever seen. "I'm Ruby," she said in a voice that was much stronger than her small body suggested. "Are you nice?" Lisa couldn't help but smile. Kids always ask the most direct questions. "I try to be," she said. "Are you nice?" "My daddy says I'm the nicest girl in the whole world, but I think he might be a little bit biased because he loves me," Ruby said with a giggle that made Lisa's heart melt. That's when Lisa noticed the man sitting in the chair next to Ruby's bed. He was probably in his early 30s with tired eyes and work-worn hands that were holding a cup of coffee from the hospital cafeteria. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that had seen many washes, and his work boots were scuffed and dusty. "You must be Ruby's dad," Lisa said, walking over to shake his hand. "That's me," he said, standing up. "I'm David Rodriguez." His handshake was firm but gentle. the kind of handshake that belonged to someone who worked with his hands for a living. "It's nice to meet you, David. I'm going to take good care of Ruby while she's here." David's shoulders seemed to relax a little at her words. "Thank you," he said simply, but Lisa could hear the weight of worry in those two words. Over the next few hours, Lisa learned Ruby's story. She had leukemia, and this was her third time in the hospital for treatment. Her mom had died in a car accident 2 years ago, so it was just Ruby and her dad now. David worked construction, which meant his income depended on having work available and being healthy enough to do it. When Ruby was in the hospital, he couldn't work because he refused to leave her side. "Daddy sleeps in that chair every night," Ruby told Lisa while Lisa was checking her IV line. "I told him the nurses said he could go home and sleep in a real bed. But he says the chair is just fine." Lisa looked over at David, who was pretending to read a magazine but was clearly listening to every word his daughter said. She recognized something in his face, something she knew from looking in her own mirror. It was the look of someone who was doing everything they could with what they had, even when what they had wasn't quite enough. During her lunch break, Lisa found David in the family lounge, staring at a vending machine like it held the answers to all of life's problems. "Those sandwiches aren't as bad as they look," she said, sitting down in the chair next to him. David smiled a tired smile. "I was trying to decide if I was hungry enough to spend $3 on something that might or might not actually be food." Lisa understood that calculation completely. She'd done the same math with the same vending machine more times than she could count. "The turkey one isn't terrible," she offered, "and the chips are actually pretty good." "How long have you been working here?" David asked. 3 years, Lisa said. "Best job I've ever had, even on the worst days." "Ruby really likes you," David said. "She told me you're the first nurse who didn't talk to her like she was a baby. She said you talk to her like she's a real person." "She is a real person," Lisa said. "A pretty amazing one from what I can tell." David's eyes filled with something that might have been tears, but he blinked them away quickly. "She's everything to me," he said quietly. "After her mom died, Ruby became my whole world. I don't know what I'd do if—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Lisa had heard that unfinished sentence from dozens of parents sitting in the same lounge, staring at the same vending machine. "She's strong," Lisa said, "and she's got great doctors here. Dr. Peterson has been treating kids with leukemia for 20 years. If anyone can help Ruby, it's him." "The treatments are expensive," David said, not looking at Lisa. "Even with insurance, there's always something that's not covered. Co-pays, medications, special tests. I had to take out a loan against my truck just to pay for the last round." Lisa nodded. She knew about expensive medical bills from watching her mom struggle with them. "I keep thinking I should get a second job," David continued. "But when would I work it? I can't leave Ruby alone here. And when she's home, she needs me there too. Some days she's so tired from the chemo that she can barely get out of bed." "You're a good dad," Lisa said. "Ruby knows how much you love her. That's worth more than money." David finally put his $3 into the vending machine and selected the turkey sandwich. "Want to split it?" he asked. "I'm not actually hungry enough to eat the whole thing." Lisa was touched by the offer. Here was a man who was clearly counting every penny, offering to share his lunch with someone he'd just met. "Sure," she said, "but I'll get the chips." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, eating their shared meal and thinking about the little girl in room 314 who had brought them together. "Can I ask you something?" David said eventually. "Of course. Do you ever feel like you're just barely keeping your head above water? Like you're working as hard as you can, but you're not really getting anywhere?" Lisa almost laughed, but not because it was funny. She almost laughed because it was such a perfect description of her life that she wondered if David had been reading her diary. "Every single day," she said honestly. "But you keep doing it. Anyway, what else can you do?" Lisa said. "You keep showing up, you keep trying, and you hope that tomorrow will be a little bit easier than today." David nodded like he understood. Exactly what she meant, Ruby's lucky to have you as her nurse, he said, and she's lucky to have you as her dad. When Lisa went back to check on Ruby later that afternoon, she found the little girl teaching her father how to make friendship bracelets with some yarn the activity coordinator had brought by. "Look, Lisa," Ruby called out. "I'm making Daddy a bracelet so he won't forget me when I'm not here anymore." "Ruby," David said gently, "you know I could never forget you." "I know," Ruby said seriously, "but now you'll have something pretty to remember me by." Lisa felt her throat tighten. Kids had a way of saying things that cut right through all the complicated adult emotions and got straight to the truth. As she watched, David struggling to braid tiny pieces of yarn with his big construction worker hands, Lisa realized that she and David weren't so different after all. They were both people who had been handed challenges they didn't ask for, but they kept showing up anyway. They kept doing their best with what they had, and they kept believing that love was enough to get them through whatever came next. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa first met Ruby and her father David. What started as a professional, nurse-patient relationship had slowly grown into something that felt more like friendship. Lisa found herself looking forward to her shifts in room 314, not just because Ruby was getting better, but because spending time with them had become the highlight of her long days. Ruby was responding well to her treatment, which meant she had more energy and was back to being the chatty, curious 8-year-old she was before the cancer tried to steal her spark. She'd started asking Lisa dozens of questions about everything from why the hospital walls were painted green to whether nurses had to go to school for a really long time like doctors. "Lisa, do you have a boyfriend?" Ruby asked one Tuesday morning while Lisa was checking her temperature. "Ruby," David said from his usual chair, not looking up from the crossword puzzle he was working on. "That's not really our business." "It's okay," Lisa said, smiling. "No, Ruby, I don't have a boyfriend right now." "Why not?" Ruby asked with the innocent directness that only children possess. "You're really pretty and you're super nice and you smell good all the time." Lisa couldn't help but laugh. "Well, thank you for those very kind compliments. I guess I just haven't met the right person yet." "Maybe you're too busy taking care of sick kids like me," Ruby said thoughtfully. "That's probably more important than boyfriends anyway." David looked up from his crossword and caught Lisa's eye. There was something in his expression that she couldn't quite read, but it made her feel warm and a little nervous at the same time. Over the weeks, Lisa had learned more about David's life. He'd been married to his high school sweetheart, Ruby's mother, and they'd been planning to have more children when the accident happened. He worked for a small construction company that specialized in home renovations, and he was good at what he did. Really good. His boss had been understanding about Ruby's hospital stays, but David knew he couldn't keep taking time off without it affecting his job. The thing about construction work, he'd told Lisa during one of their conversations in the family lounge, is that there's always someone younger and stronger and more available willing to do your job. "I'm lucky my boss likes me, but luck only goes so far." Lisa understood that pressure. In nursing, you were always replaceable too. There were always new graduates willing to work for less money and longer hours. She'd also learned that David was funny in a quiet way. He didn't tell jokes, but he noticed things that made everyday situations amusing. Like how the vending machine in the family lounge made a sound like a dying robot every time someone bought the fruit snacks, or how Dr. Peterson always adjusted his tie exactly 3 times before entering a patient's room. "You pay attention to people," Lisa had told him one day. "Construction teaches you that," he'd replied. "If you don't pay attention to details, buildings fall down. I guess the habit carries over to everything else." Lisa had started bringing extra snacks from home to share with David. Nothing expensive, just things like crackers or granola bars that she bought in bulk. She told herself it was because she felt bad watching him ration his meals. But if she was being honest, she also just enjoyed their conversations during her breaks. On Thursday afternoon, Jessica stopped by room 314 while Lisa was helping Ruby with some schoolwork that the hospital teacher had brought by. "Hey, Lisa," Jessica said, bouncing into the room with the kind of energy that only came from having gotten 8 hours of sleep and a real breakfast. "I need to show you something." Jessica pulled out her phone and started scrolling through photos. "Look at this dress I found for the gala. Isn't it perfect?" The dress was beautiful. It was a deep blue color that would look amazing with Jessica's blonde hair, and it had these delicate beading details on the sleeves that probably cost more than Lisa's monthly grocery budget. "It's gorgeous," Lisa said, and she meant it. Jessica had great taste, and she always looked put together in a way that Lisa admired. "I got it at that new boutique downtown. It was a little expensive, but you know, the gala only happens once a year, right?" Jessica held up the phone so Lisa could see the dress better. "What are you planning to wear? We should coordinate colors so we look good in photos together." Lisa felt her stomach drop. She'd been hoping Jessica would forget about asking her to go to the gala. But clearly that wasn't going to happen. I haven't really decided yet, Lisa said, trying to keep her voice light and casual. Girl, the gala's in 2 weeks, Jessica said. You need to get shopping. Oh, and we should definitely get our hair done together the day before. I made appointments at that salon on 5th Street. Want me to book you one too? Ruby, who had been quietly listening to this conversation while working on her math worksheet, looked up with interest. What's a gala? It's like a fancy party, Jessica explained. All the doctors and nurses get dressed up really pretty, and they have dinner and dancing and give out awards for the best workers. That sounds fun, Ruby said, looking at Lisa. Are you going to wear a princess dress? Well, Lisa said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it to the party. What do you mean? Jessica asked. Of course you're going. You work harder than anyone in this place. You deserve to have some fun. Lisa could feel David watching her from his chair, and she was pretty sure he was starting to understand her discomfort. She'd gotten good at reading his expressions over the past few weeks, and right now he looked concerned. I'm just really busy, Lisa said weakly. And you know how these fancy events are. They're not really my thing. That's exactly why you should go, Jessica insisted. You need to get out more. When's the last time you did something just for fun? Lisa couldn't actually remember the last time she'd done something just for fun. Everything in her life was about necessity, about getting through another day, another week, another month. I don't know, Jessica. We'll see. Jessica looked like she was about to argue more, but her phone buzzed with a text message. Oh, I have to run. Dr. Martinez needs me in the ICU. But Lisa, seriously, think about it. It would be so much fun to go together. After Jessica left, Ruby went back to her math worksheet. But Lisa could tell she was still thinking about the conversation. Lisa, Ruby said after a few minutes, why don't you want to go to the fancy party? It's complicated, sweetheart. Is it because you don't like parties? No, I like parties just fine. Ruby chewed on her pencil eraser, which was a habit she had when she was thinking hard about something. Is it because you don't have anyone to dance with? Ruby, honey, you don't need to worry about grown-up stuff like this. But Ruby wasn't giving up that easily. My mommy always said that when grown-ups say something is complicated, it usually means they're sad about something but don't want to talk about it. David looked up from his crossword again. Ruby, maybe Lisa doesn't want to talk about the party right now. It's okay, Lisa said, sitting down on the edge of Ruby's bed. Your mom sounds like she was a very smart lady. She was, Ruby said seriously. She could always tell when people were sad, even when they were trying to hide it. Are you sad about the party, Lisa? Lisa looked at this 8-year-old girl who was fighting cancer, but was more concerned about her nurse's feelings than her own problems. She looked at David, who was pretending to read his crossword but was clearly listening to every word. These two people had become important to her over the past few weeks, and they'd both been through so much more than she had. You know what, Ruby? Sometimes grown-ups want to do things but they can't, and that can make them feel a little sad. Like what? Lisa took a deep breath. She'd never told anyone about her financial problems, not even her closest friends. She was too proud, too embarrassed. But something about Ruby's honest question and David's quiet presence made her feel safe enough to tell the truth. Well, she said slowly, fancy parties require fancy clothes, and sometimes people don't have fancy clothes to wear. Ruby nodded like this made perfect sense. Like when I wanted to be a princess for Halloween, but we didn't have money for a costume. So Daddy helped me make one out of old sheets and some sparkly stuff from the craft store. Exactly like that. But your costume was really pretty, Ruby said to her father. Then she looked back at Lisa. Daddy's really good at making things. Maybe he could help you make a fancy dress. David's face turned slightly red. Ruby, I don't think Lisa needs help making a dress. Why not? You helped Mrs. Patterson fix her kitchen cabinets, and you built that ramp for Mr. Chen's wheelchair, and you painted Mrs. Garcia's whole house when her son was deployed. Those are different kinds of projects. Sweetheart. Lisa was touched by Ruby's innocent desire to solve her problem, but she was also embarrassed that she'd admitted to financial troubles in front of David. He had enough to worry about with Ruby's medical bills and missing work. It's really okay, Ruby, Lisa said. The party isn't that important anyway. But Jessica said they give awards to the best workers, Ruby protested. And you're definitely one of the best workers. You take such good care of me, and you always remember to bring me the good ice chips. And you never make me feel like a baby. Awards aren't everything, sweetheart. But don't you want people to know how good you are at your job? Lisa looked at this little girl who believed so strongly that good people deserved good things. Ruby's faith in fairness and justice hadn't been shaken by everything she'd been through. She still believed that hard work should be rewarded, that kind people should be celebrated. Sometimes, Ruby, life doesn't work exactly the way we think it should. David closed his crossword puzzle and looked directly at Lisa. Can I ask you something? Sure. If money wasn't an issue, would you want to go to this gala? Lisa considered lying, but she'd already told more truth in the past 10 minutes than she usually told in a month. Yes, she said quietly. I think I would. Ruby clapped her hands together like she'd just solved a puzzle. Then we just have to figure out the money part. It's not that simple, honey. Why not? Lisa looked at David, hoping he might help her explain to his daughter why the world was more complicated than 8-year-olds believed it should be. But David was looking at her with an expression she'd never seen before. It wasn't pity and it wasn't judgment. It was something else entirely, something that made her heart beat a little faster. Maybe it could be that simple, he said quietly. And for the first time in weeks, Lisa wondered if maybe, just maybe, he might be right. The next morning, David woke up in the uncomfortable hospital chair with Ruby's words still echoing in his head. Maybe he could help you make a fancy dress. His 8-year-old daughter had said it like it was the most obvious solution in the world. But David had been thinking about it all night, and he knew making a dress wasn't the real answer. He'd been awake since 4 in the morning, watching Ruby sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. Her color was better, and she wasn't having the nightmares that used to wake her up crying. Dr. Peterson had said yesterday that if her blood work continued to improve, she might be able to go home by the weekend. It was the best news they'd gotten in months. But as happy as David was about Ruby's progress, he couldn't stop thinking about Lisa and the sadness in her eyes when she talked about the gala. He'd recognized that look because he'd seen it in his own mirror plenty of times. It was the look of someone who worked hard and deserved good things but couldn't afford them. Over the past few weeks, he'd come to realize that Lisa meant more to him than just Ruby's nurse. She'd become the first person he looked forward to seeing each day. When she walked into the room with her warm smile and her gentle way of talking to Ruby, something inside him felt lighter. He hadn't felt that way about anyone since his wife died, and it both excited and terrified him. Ruby stirred in her bed and opened her eyes. Morning, Daddy. Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Better, she said, stretching her small arms above her head. I had a dream about Mommy last night. David's chest tightened. Ruby didn't talk about her mother very often, and when she did, it always caught him off guard. What was the dream about? She was wearing a really pretty dress like the one Jessica showed Lisa yesterday, and she told me that sometimes angels help people get the things they need, but they have to be brave enough to ask for help. David felt his throat get tight. That sounds like something your mom would say. Daddy, do you like Lisa? The question was so direct and unexpected that David almost choked on the coffee he was sipping. What do you mean, sweetheart? I mean, do you like her like how you liked Mommy? David set down his coffee cup and looked at his daughter. Sometimes Ruby seemed much older than 8, like she understood things that adults tried to hide from children. Lisa is a very special person, he said carefully. That's not what I asked. David sighed. Ruby had inherited her mother's ability to see straight through any attempt to avoid a difficult conversation. I think I might, he admitted. Is that okay with you? Ruby smiled, the biggest smile he'd seen from her in weeks. I think Mommy would like Lisa too, and I think Lisa is lonely, just like how you get lonely sometimes when you think I'm not looking. David was amazed by his daughter's insight. He thought he'd been hiding his loneliness pretty well, but apparently not well enough to fool Ruby. The thing is, sweetheart, it's been a long time since I've talked to someone about feelings. I'm not sure I remember how. It's easy, Ruby said with the confidence of someone who had never experienced heartbreak. You just tell them the truth. And what if the truth scares them away? Then they weren't the right person anyway. But I don't think Lisa scares easy. She takes care of kids with cancer all day long. That's pretty brave. When Lisa arrived for her shift an hour later, David felt his heart speed up in a way that reminded him of being 16 and asking someone to the prom, except he was 32 now, and this felt much more important than any high school dance. Good morning, you two, Lisa said, bringing her usual warmth into the room. Ruby, you look like you're feeling much better today. I am, Ruby said, giving her father a meaningful look. And Daddy has something he wants to talk to you about. David felt his face turn red. Ruby, we talked about this. Talked about what? Lisa asked, looking between father and daughter with curiosity. Nothing important, David said quickly. Yes, it is important, Ruby insisted. Daddy, remember what I said about being brave? Lisa sat down in the chair next to Ruby's bed. What's going on, guys? You're both acting kind of mysterious. David looked at his daughter, who was giving him an encouraging nod, then looked at Lisa, who was waiting patiently with that kind expression she always wore when she was trying to help someone feel comfortable. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Of course. When you were talking yesterday about the gala, about not being able to go, that wasn't really about not liking parties, was it? Lisa's cheeks turned pink. David, you don't need to worry about that. It's really not a big deal. But it is a big deal, Ruby chimed in. You work super hard and you take care of everyone else, but nobody takes care of you. Ruby's right, David said. I've been watching you these past few weeks and you're always thinking about other people. You bring me extra food. You stay late to read to Ruby when she can't sleep. You even help that family down the hall figure out their insurance paperwork. But when do you do something nice for yourself? Lisa looked uncomfortable. I'm fine, really. I don't need anyone to take care of me. Everyone needs someone to take care of them sometimes, David said softly. Even nurses who spend all day taking care of everyone else. There was something in his voice that made Lisa look at him more closely. His usual shy smile was there, but there was something else too. Something that made her heart flutter in a way she hadn't experienced in years. David, what are you trying to say? He took a deep breath, the kind you take before jumping off a high diving board. I'm trying to say that I'd like to buy you a dress for the gala. Lisa's eyes widened. Oh, David, I couldn't possibly accept that. It's too much. Wait, let me finish, he said quickly before his courage disappeared. I'm not just offering to buy you a dress because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering because I'd like to take you to the gala, as my date. The room went completely quiet except for the steady beeping of Ruby's monitors. Lisa stared at David, trying to process what he'd just said. You want to take me to the hospital gala? She asked slowly. If you'd want to go with me, David said, his voice shaking slightly. I know this probably sounds crazy. I haven't been on a date since before Ruby was born, and I know you could probably go with someone much more sophisticated than a construction worker who wears the same 3 shirts in rotation. Daddy? Ruby interrupted. You're doing it wrong. I'm doing what wrong? You're supposed to tell her all the good things about why she should go with you, not the bad things. David couldn't help but smile. You're right. Let me try again. He looked directly at Lisa, and when he spoke again, his voice was steadier. I'd like to take you to the gala because you're the kindest person I've ever met. Because you make Ruby laugh when she's in pain. And you make me feel hopeful when I've been scared for months. Because I think you deserve to be celebrated. And I'd be honored to be the person standing next to you when that happens. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. And, David continued, I'd like to take you because I haven't felt this way about someone in 2 years. And I think maybe it's time I was brave enough to see where these feelings might go. You like Lisa like how you liked Mommy, Ruby said matter-of-factly. Ruby, David said, his face turning bright red. It's okay, Daddy. Mommy would want you to be happy, and she'd want Lisa to have a pretty dress. Lisa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. David, this is incredibly sweet, but I can't let you spend money on me. You have Ruby's medical bills, and I've been saving money for months, David said. Money I was going to use to take Ruby on a vacation when she got better. But she told me this morning that what would make her happiest would be seeing you happy. So please let me do this. Let me take you shopping for a dress, and let me take you to the gala, and let me show you what it feels like to be treated the way you deserve to be treated. Ruby clapped her hands together. Say yes, Lisa. Please say yes. Lisa looked at this man who had just opened his heart to her in the most honest, vulnerable way possible. She looked at this little girl who was fighting cancer, but was more concerned with everyone else's happiness than her own. She thought about all the reasons she should say no, all the practical concerns, all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about what Ruby had said about being brave. Yes, she said quietly. I'd love to go to the gala with you. David's smile was so bright it could have lit up the entire hospital. Really? Really? Ruby cheered from her hospital bed. This is the best day ever. Wait until I tell Dr. Peterson that my daddy asked my nurse on a date. Ruby, let's maybe keep this between us for now, David said, but he was still smiling. Can we go shopping for the dress today? Ruby asked excitedly. I want to help pick it out. Lisa laughed. I think your dad and I can handle the shopping. You need to rest so you can get better and come home. But I want to see what you look like in a fancy dress. You will, sweetheart, David said. We'll take pictures. As Lisa watched David explain to Ruby about appropriate dress shopping protocols, she realized that for the first time in years, she was genuinely excited about something. Not just grateful, not just relieved, but actually excited. Maybe Ruby was right. Maybe good people did deserve good things. And maybe, just maybe, she was about to find out what that felt like. Saturday. Morning brought the best news the Rodriguez family had heard in months. Dr. Peterson walked into room 314 with Ruby's test results and a smile that reached his eyes. Well, young lady, he said to Ruby, it looks like you're going home today. Ruby's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? For real? For real. Your blood counts are looking great, and I think you'll be much more comfortable in your own bed. David felt like he could breathe properly for the first time in weeks. His little girl was going home. She was going to be okay. Does this mean I can help pick out Lisa's dress? Ruby asked, bouncing slightly in her hospital bed. Dr. Peterson looked confused. Lisa's dress? My daddy asked Lisa to be his girlfriend and take her to the fancy party, Ruby announced proudly. Ruby, David said, his face turning red again. Lisa and I we're just going to the gala together. As boyfriend and girlfriend, Ruby added matter-of-factly. Dr. Peterson chuckled. Well, that's wonderful news. Lisa is a special person. When Lisa arrived for what would be her last shift taking care of Ruby, she found father and daughter packing up their few belongings. Ruby's coloring books, the friendship bracelets she'd made for all the nurses, and the small stuffed bear that had been her companion through all the treatments. I hear someone gets to go home today, Lisa said, trying to sound cheerful even though she was going to miss seeing them every day. And I get to help you pick out a pretty dress. Ruby said excitedly. Actually, David said, looking a little nervous, I was hoping we could do that this afternoon. I know the gala is next Saturday, so we don't have much time. Lisa felt butterflies in her stomach. She'd been so focused on the idea of actually going to the gala that she hadn't really thought about the shopping part. She couldn't remember the last time she'd bought something new to wear. Are you sure about this? She asked David quietly. I don't want you spending money you need for other things. I'm sure, he said. Besides, Ruby won't let me back out now even if I wanted to. 3 hours later, Lisa found herself standing outside a department store with David and Ruby, feeling more nervous than she had on her first day of nursing school. Ruby had insisted on coming along even though she was still weak from her treatments. I know exactly what kind of dress Lisa needs, Ruby declared as they walked through the automatic doors. Oh, really? Lisa asked. And what kind is that? The kind that makes you look like a princess but also like a nurse. Something pretty but not too sparkly because you don't like being the center of attention. Lisa was amazed by how well Ruby understood her. You've been paying attention. I pay attention to everyone I love, Ruby said simply. The word love hung in the air between them. Ruby had said it so naturally, like it was obvious that she loved Lisa, like it was the most normal thing in the world. They made their way to the women's clothing section, and Lisa felt overwhelmed by all the choices. She was used to shopping in thrift stores and clearance racks, not in places where dresses cost more than her monthly grocery budget. What about this one? David asked, holding up a bright red dress with sequins. Too sparkly, Ruby said immediately. Lisa doesn't like sparkly things. How about this? Lisa suggested, pointing to a simple black dress that was on sale. Too sad, Ruby said. You need something that makes you smile when you look at it. They spent the next hour browsing through racks of dresses, while Ruby provided running commentary on each option. Too fancy. Not fancy enough. Wrong color. Right color but wrong shape. Lisa was starting to think they'd never find anything when Ruby suddenly gasped. That one, she said, pointing to a dress hanging near the back of the rack. Lisa looked where Ruby was pointing and saw a navy blue dress with a simple, elegant cut. It had small pearl buttons down the back and sleeves that would hit just below her elbows. It was beautiful without being overly fancy, professional but still feminine. "Try it on," David said softly. Lisa took the dress to the fitting room, her hands shaking slightly as she hung it on the hook. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been this nervous about putting on a piece of clothing. When she slipped the dress over her head, she was amazed at how perfectly it fit. The color brought out her eyes, and the cut was flattering without being too revealing. She looked at herself in the mirror, and for the first time in years, she felt beautiful. She stepped out of the fitting room, and David's expression told her everything she needed to know. "Oh, Lisa," Ruby breathed. "You look like a real princess." "You look perfect," David said, his voice softer than usual. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes. "Are you sure it's not too expensive?" David checked the price tag and didn't even flinch. "It's perfect. We'll take it." As they stood in line to pay, Ruby tugged on Lisa's hand. "Lisa, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. After the fancy party, are you still going to come visit us? Even though I won't be in the hospital anymore?" Lisa knelt down so she was at Ruby's eye level. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away. You're stuck with me now." Ruby threw her arms around Lisa's neck. "Good. Because I was thinking you could come over for dinner sometime. Daddy makes really good spaghetti, and I could show you my room and all my books. I would love that more than anything." The night of the gala arrived faster than Lisa had expected. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, wearing the navy blue dress and a pair of low heels she'd borrowed from Jessica. Her hair was styled in a simple updo that she'd watched 3 YouTube videos to learn how to do. When David knocked on her apartment door at 6 o'clock, she took a deep breath before opening it. "Wow," he said when he saw her. "You look absolutely beautiful." He was wearing a dark suit that he'd clearly bought just for the occasion, and he looked more handsome than she'd ever seen him. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she said, smiling. The hospital ballroom had been transformed with white linens, twinkling lights, and centerpieces of white roses. Lisa had never seen it look so elegant. "This is incredible," she said as they found their assigned table. "Not as incredible as you," David replied, and Lisa felt her cheeks warm. During dinner, Lisa found herself relaxing and actually enjoying the evening. David was funny and charming, and he made her feel comfortable even surrounded by all the hospital administrators and board members she usually only saw from a distance. When the awards ceremony began, Lisa clapped politely for each winner, not expecting anything for herself. And this year's Outstanding Pediatric Nurse Award goes to someone who consistently goes above and beyond for her patients and their families, the presenter announced. "Lisa Chen." Lisa's mouth fell open. She looked at David, who was grinning and applauding. "Go," he said. "Go get your award." Lisa walked to the front of the room in a daze. The presenter handed her a beautiful crystal award and asked her to say a few words. "I don't really know what to say," she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I became a nurse because I wanted to help people, and every day I get to work with the bravest patients and families. They teach me more about courage and hope than I could ever teach them. This award isn't just for me. It's for every patient who trusted me with their care and every family who let me be part of their journey." The applause was thunderous. As Lisa walked back to her table, she saw David wiping his eyes. "I'm so proud of you," he said when she sat down. "I can't believe this is happening." "Believe it. You deserve this and so much more." Later, as they danced to a slow song, David pulled her closer. "Can I tell you something?" he said always. 3 weeks ago, I was just a scared single dad trying to keep it together for Ruby. I never imagined that walking into that hospital would change my whole life." "Mine too," Lisa whispered. "I know this is all happening fast, and I know we're both scared of getting hurt again, but I want to try. I want to see where this goes. Ruby adores you and He paused, taking a deep breath. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Lisa felt her heart race. "I think I'm falling in love with you too." As they swayed together in the ballroom, surrounded by twinkling lights and the soft sound of music, Lisa thought about how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She'd started as a broke nurse who couldn't afford a dress, and now she was holding an award for excellence while dancing with a man who saw her worth. But more than that, she'd gained a family. Ruby had already started calling her almost mommy when she thought the adults weren't listening. David had shown her what it felt like to be cherished and supported. and she'd discovered that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin in the most unexpected places. 6 months later, Lisa was standing in the same navy blue dress, but this time in a small church surrounded by friends from the hospital and David's construction crew. Ruby walked down the aisle as the flower girl, beaming with pride as she scattered rose petals. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Ruby piped up from the front row, "I object to waiting any longer. Hurry up so we can have cake." The congregation burst into laughter, and Lisa knew she'd found exactly where she belonged. In this little family that had found each other when they all needed it most, in this love that had started with a simple question about a dress and had grown into something beautiful and lasting. The dress still hangs in their bedroom closet, right next to David's suit from that first magical night. Sometimes Ruby asks to hear the story again about how her daddy asked her nurse to the fancy party, and how that one question changed all their lives forever.